like this particular TRC which we have been conducting is outcome-based education. And I would basically talk today on my thoughts, experiments, and experiences regarding architecture education. My intention would not be to dictate or to basically tell what is to be done with, but to open a thought process as to what kind of experiments we have been doing. I won't preach, but would share experiences of my 26 years of teaching and learning journey. And during this 26 years, I've been experimenting a lot into a particular entirely different scenario in central India. Though I believe today that these learning methods should be extremely contextual, but experiments and experiences needs to be fundamentally looked at. And it's always a team effort which has to function in a smooth and coordinated way. And there's always one senior faculty who handles this entire journey, and other members support it and enhance it. And so during this 26 years of teaching journey, I had been into two institutions primarily. One as an associate professor, I basically left that institution where I was an employee primarily. And the second one as academic head, where I was one of the part of the promoter of the institution, which is Ideas Nagpur. So being a part of the promoter of the institution gave me a lot of freedom and tolerance in experimenting my thought process. As I've said, possibly in my introduction, Navneet might have said this, that I started my academic endeavor in 1995. And in 2009, we with group of academicians and practicing architects started Ideas Nagpur with an intention to have an open platform for various kind of thought processes which are going to be there. Being the academic head of that particular institution for the 10 long years, I proposed many new projects, many new experiments in various kind of design fields and construction fields also. So today what I'm going to do basically is going to share my experiences which were being done. I would share students' works, I would share my work, and that would open up a thought process as to what is to be done with. What I feel that teaching in a creative applied education always calls for a collaboration of a team effort. So I was fortunate enough to have a very good team of seniors and juniors who guided me and allowed me to experiment. So having said that, I would share my screen with the presentation. Yeah. So my screen is visible.
Yes, yes, Milind, it is visible. If you can put it on the slideshow.
Yeah, I'm just, yeah. Is there?
Yes, perfect, perfect.
Yeah. So I would be over here basically talking about the various parameters which are important to teaching methods in the School of Architecture. So these parameters, according to me, number one is the syllabus, which I would be discussing in detail. Number two are the institutional projects, which I would be elaborating. So I would be elaborating these chapters in my presentation. I would talk design as a base for all the subjects and how it has to be dealt with. Events without grading. Now, this is an experiment which we have been doing. Some of the projects which are being done in the institution without any kind of grading associated with it. Real world experiences. So these are the 5 areas I think are extremely important for any faculty to understand how these teaching methods could be enhanced with. We all know that our syllabuses are essentially governed by the universities in which we are affiliated to, and also peripherally and majorly are being governed by the guidelines of the COA. So these two organizations at times, like we in Nagpur are being associated to a state university. Some of you might be associated with private universities who have their own syllabi. And COA basically governs all these syllabi. When we talk about this, as I've told earlier, that we have to be a part of a team to look at this syllabus and handle them. And there has to have one senior faculty who has a task of motivation and set of a lot of things for the other people within the gamut of the syllabus. The second most important thing which I find is studio management. Many a times you find that we as a faculty have got a lot of methodologies, a lot of presentations, papers as to how to conduct various subjects, and we present it with our colleagues, we present it with your seniors, we present it with your head of the institutions. But what is more important is how it is executed in the studio. So studio management becomes extremely important to have a effective implementation of what we see. What I found important is when we look at the syllabus and when we talk about various kind of events and activities and studios which we arrange in this modern world, language, food, clothes, entertainment, design, etc., and education all are aspiring to be homogenized. You'll find that everyone is falling into the same line. You have the same kind of clothes pan India, same kind of food coming over here over a period of time. Entertainment is being localized. Earlier, we used to have various kind of entertainments which were extremely localized. And so architecture is also been very much homogenized. So all over the world, in all over the syllabus, the syllabus are more or less same. So what I feel that with this particular homogenization of various kind of fields of our society is destroying the cultural rootedness and the diversity. So we need to use this syllabi given by the university and governed by the COA to redefine itself into our own heterogeneous cultural diversity. Thus, let us aspire to have a heterogeneous education to start with. So, once I say this, we have to look at what are the possibilities of having heterogeneous education systems, wherein we talk about extremely localized kind of teaching systems, but at the same time, peripherally, there are a lot of things which needs to be addressed with. So, this is a syllabus grab of Nagpur University, though it has been governed by COA, but if in case you look at it, majorly this kind of syllabuses might be there in all of the universities. So first semester, if in case you look at, we have no written paper governed by the university. So it's 100% sessional. All the subjects are evaluated at institute level. When I say sessional, it is being evaluated at the institute level. Second semester happens the same way. So we have 41% of theory paper which is evaluated by the university level and 59% into sessionals. And likewise, I have just put up what happens in various semesters. So when I average it out, I find out that it's just 20% of theory papers have been governed by the universities. And there's 80% possibility of redefining ourselves within our sessionals. So when I say we have 80% sessionals, means that we have a possibility of defining our own course of action, thus defining our own school of thought within the format of the syllabus. So this is where it becomes extremely important to understand how to handle these particular sessional issues and how to redefine them according to your requirements. So I would basically talk about this, what experimentation which we have been doing over a period of time. And that's where these institutional projects comes into picture, the events without grading comes into picture, and so many other things comes into picture. Yeah. So if in case we look at the syllabus, I've just put up the focus areas which we had and how we redefined this syllabus according to our requirement. So semester one essentially does not talk about architecture a lot. It basically talks about visual composition and understanding design. And so we basically focus ourselves towards element of composition, sketching, sculptures, models. So these are light fields comes into picture. Then architectural material handling, soft skill development, structural elements and their role, and so many things. So what we have done is we have, as other institutions, have teams of designs which handle semesters or years. We have bifurcated these teams into odd even semesters. So what we have done is We have combined semester 2 and 3 into one team. The moment we do that, in between semester 2 and semester 3, we get this summer vacation, which allows me to handle this entire batch into institutional projects. So when we say that semester 2 and 3 is basically focused at cultural and regional context, so anthropometry comes into picture, elements of space making comes into picture. We talk about architectural elements, ancillary elements and character definition, experimentation in residential spaces, and cultural and regional reflections. So in addition to that, we also have one subject which is called as Allied Design Studio. So this Allied Design Studio allows, which is essentially completely a sessional subject for all the years, which continues with design. But it talks about allied design, not architecture design essentially. And this peripheral design allows a lot of experimentation within the faculties and also within the students. So I was talking about this summer vacation, which comes in between the even semester and odd semester, that is semester 2 and semester 3. So we squeeze in between summer settlement studio. So primarily it is a rural design studies which comes into picture. I would elaborate what rural design studies is all about. So the point over here is redefining this summer vacation into some kind of activities. Similarly, in semester 4 and 5, where the focus is exploration in forms and material, we have this summer team building sessions wherein we experiment a lot of material exploration and team building activities which are happening around, which is happening in between semester 4 and 5. Similarly, in semester 6 and 7, we have urban design studios coming in between 6th and 7th semester. And over here, we basically experiment in between these summers because there are no examination, no formal studios happening around, and we define this particular studio in the vacations. And then we have practical training and the project. Now, in addition to that, we may have a break in between the 3rd and 4th semester, 5th and 6th semester, 7th and 8th semester, which we call as winter break. We have a vertical design studio coming in, which I would also elaborate what is happening around with this. So briefly, I would tell that it is Ideas Design Opportunity is an initiative where vertical interaction among students of all years is envisaged for coordinated team effort to bring out creative best from each student. It's a platform for basically learning from peer to peer. So there are these two verticals which are being added. One happens in between the summer vacations and second happens in between the winter vacations. So when we say that institutional projects, so this is what I was talking about. So summer design studies, we have three possibilities which we have according to the stages of the students. Like rural design studies comes in between 2nd and 3rd semester, exploration in forms comes in between 5th and 6th, and 7th and 8th becomes urban design studio. We would elaborate this, one of them, that is rural design studies. So what is rural design studies is basically we as faculty. So these are various summer vacation, summer studios which we conduct. Now, rural design studies is basically a particular project wherein we as faculty search villages in and around central India. What we have done is we have formulated a grid of 100 kilometers by 100 kilometers. And within this grid, we identified 2-3 villages. We have been documenting these villages for the last 4-5 years. We take all the students to these villages. We stay there for 6-7 days. All the students, they document design, not only architecture, they document design. And this is just a documentation. It's not about, this is not a studio, this is studies. And that's why this documentation happens in these villages. So we have documented nothing less than 10-20 villages for the last 5-6 years. So this is one of the examples which I am showing you right now. So this was a village which is called as Budma in Madhya Pradesh. So documenting design means documenting activities also. we have a brief given to the students as to how to document villages. Number one is that all the sketching, all the documentation has to happen on site. We are not doing anything when we come back. So all these drawings are made on site. So they collect information during daytime and they sketch everything. So there is no electronic equipment used. All happens freehand. Everything is done on site. We also document activities. So that's why those activities has to be reflected into the plan forms, the footprint of the buildings. Number three, what we have done is we have completely taken off language as a barrier. So students can document their drawings in any language they feel like. They could write activities in Hindi, English, Marathi, or whatever language they feel correct is. That gives a very nice opportunity for them to think or to think in their mother tongue, which gives a lot of cultural overtones. Due to this, there is a very direct connect with the villages, and the activities becomes more relevant in this context. So these are the plans which I am showing, which have been documented by students. There are name of the students, the sheets are made, the formats are pre-made. We go to the site and we start documentation. We also teach students how to learn building, as to convert this building into statements. So that becomes extremely important, because when you see an elevation, he should start deriving proportions out of it. So this much times the window is this many times the height, and accordingly this is the proportion of the door as compared to the height of the building. This is the proportion of the roof. There are 8 windows which are divided into 16 parts, such kind of things. So the moment he starts learning this, he would never forget, and whenever he comes back, he could easily sketch this because he has memorized this building in his statements. So these statements could be any language which he feels. So these are the sections and elevations which are being made by the students. Also the structural systems comes into picture. We document a lot of activities which are associated with the village, because a village does not exist in isolation. There are a lot of festivals, rituals, functions which are reflected directly within the villages. We found that these are profoundly beautiful houses, and the underlining thing is that there are no architects, no designer involved into designing these all villages. Number two, there are no bylaws affecting these villages. This is again one of the important things which we all know, but then which has been very nicely registered by us over a period of time. And due to this, there is a lot of flexibility in these generic forms which have been derived by these villagers. So these are the roofing systems which the students have done. This is the work done by the students who have just passed out the second semester. We document their utensils, their storage systems, their equipments, agricultural practices, and wherever they could find out design. So we just give them a brief that whatever you find which is appealing to you in terms of design should be documented. So these students also documented their jewelries and what associated festivals and rituals they have with these jewelries. Architectural elements, obviously these are there. Now all this work is straight away converted into a book. So every year there is a book which is converted. As I have said, heard Manoj sir saying that we need to publish these things. So we do these things very religiously. This part of the project. When they come back, all the sheets and drawings are converted into a printable book. So we have 4 or 5 books which are printed, rural design studies, 18, 19, 20, such kind of things. And these books are then published in a public exhibition. Now, this is a part of their learning. The moment you have a public exhibition where general public is visiting the exhibition and they're asking questions about what they have done. So I feel that students are well equipped if in case they could answer the questions of general public. So the moment we expose them to these things, number one, what I achieve is that all the work is nicely freezed and documentable. Number two, these students, they revisit this entire exhibition themselves and they study it and they bring down to such a level that they could explain to their parents, to the people who don't know anything about architecture, and that way it becomes more relevant for them to understand things. So this is one of the release of the books. Now, in addition to that, this also becomes the part of the studio wherein we carry all those sheets to the village and we exhibit there in front of the villagers. Over here also, the students need to communicate to the villagers and establish a nice rapport with them so that they could explain what they have done. Also, the school children from the nearby villagers are, invited to come and see this work. Hereby, they all could relate themselves with the villagers. When they see their work, they really feel proud about what they have done with. And many a times we find out that there are a lot of government schemes which are allotting huge amount of money to construct houses, and we find that they all completely defy this particular morphology of houses which they had already, and they come out with brick, mortar and RCC slab houses. Reason being, many a times they say that whatever we are doing as a house in mud, they don't find it being sponsored in the government projects. So I find that still the PW does not have a mention of what a kacha house is and a pakka house is. So all these kacha houses which have been existing there since the last 100 years, they don't find any mention. And when they see these kind of drawings, they feel proud about themselves that what they have done is really good. Now the student also, feel more responsible in this case to make them understand what they have done. Also, what we do subsequently is we pull in 2-3 students from the senior classes who have done this project earlier. So there would be students from the third semester, 3-4 students as seniors. They mix with the second year students and they become part of the entire group because they have done this project once earlier. They have a nice understanding of what kind of problems these students are going to face. They make them aware of how documentation is done with, and subsequently we find that the entire work becomes one step ahead of what they have done earlier. So involving students from previous years also. So this is the exhibition which we had in the villages. And we also have a nice database of these all villages which we have documented, which are 100 kilometers apart from each other. And there is a subtle change in their housing morphology because of reasons which we could find out, like agricultural practice changes, their terrain changes, their caste system has changed, the socio-economical system has changed, and so the villages morphology has changed. Parallelly, we also encourage some students from the higher years to do research project in trying to compare these villages in between, and the comparison is then brought in a documented format. So there is a lot of linked projects which comes into things. Yeah. The third part which I have highlighted is all about teaching methods was design. So what I feel that design has to be, as all know, that you have been teaching design for possibly so many years, and you all understand that design has to be there in all subjects. There has to have a formulative format within the school of thoughts so that everything falls into place in that particular format. So what I am going to share right now is a particular format which we have been developing. The intention is not to bulldoze this particular format on you, but then yes, there has to have a format, because if in case we don't have any such kind of format for the teachers to follow, then there is no generic growth within the institution. There is no establishment of school of thought within the school. Also, there is no template for all the teachers to follow within themselves. Thirdly, there is no linking of projects which are going to be there vertically for the students as they graduate from one year to another year. So this particular format is an example which we have done, which you could also redefine as per your context. So this is just a exercise which we have done, which we follow in our institution. So first of all, we would like to have a very nice understanding about what design is. We all know about this, but still we define it very, having a very wider base into understanding what design is all about. So it's an art of and service involved in the planning and making of products, tools, artifacts, buildings, and services. The moment we say this, it allows us to venture into all these projects, which we call as Allied Design Studio. Design and designing are popular and often misused terms for a wide range of activities and outcomes, and their distinction has not been clear in popular usage. So many times you find design is being used completely in different way, this word particularly. So difficulty of defining design has been compounded by its fashionable element. So we sit together, all of us, we find out what exactly design means to us. So this is one of the lemon squeezers by Sotsas, which was defined some years ago. So design is a cautious activity guided by aims and objective. This has to be a cautious activity. It is referred to planned and organized action intended to bring out some predetermined outcome, although there may be some accidental or unexpected results. So we need to plan our things as to how these are linked with each other, what are lateral subjects which are going to come inside it, and how these subjects are going to help the core spine of design. Design activity usually displays expertise, knowledge, creativity, and thoroughness. So when we say these all words, it means that we all faculty needs to be extremely thorough in terms of what is happening all around. We should be very good, well informed on knowledge about systems, well read, well traveled. That allows us to have a lot of tolerance in understanding what other students say. It has a close relationship with technology, with human needs and aesthetics. History shows how people have exploited three profoundly human capabilities. This is the ability to create, identify, and define knowledge. So these are the three capabilities which human has been exploiting since its establishment of the civilization. Design education seeks to develop skills of investigation, idea generation, communication, and evaluation. So evaluation becomes extremely important over here. The ability to explore situation, define problems, suggest creative ways around problems, and harness technology are the valuable life skills. So the process which we have been applying over here is a 7-stage process, design approach, which we call, which has been applied to all years. Many a times it has been laterally applied to some subjects also. The first and foremost becomes orientation. So I'll just brush up what these kind of things are. Orienting students towards the new design situation. So whenever there is a design problem or a design exercise or a kind of exercise which is allotted, we basically ensure that all the team members of the faculty are completely understood the entire focus of the design situation so that they could orient students accordingly. The context, focus, evaluation pointers. Now, evaluation pointers has to be discussed before introducing a design situation. Introduction of the design brief. Possible interpretation. So we explore amongst ourselves what are the possible interpretation. We take it back to the studio. We also discuss with the students as to what are the possible interpretations amongst them. Identification of important issues. So we just distillate things and try to identify what are the important issues. Second is about consolidation. Identification of required area of knowledge in this design situation learned earlier. So what are the baggage with which the student is coming with? So what all knowledge he has been assimilated earlier, that has to be consolidated. So there is a small recapitulation lectures which comes into picture. So which basically revision of this area of knowledge, introduction of application of these areas in the current design situation. So we just hint that these are the areas in which you could apply these knowledge systems. Unification of various areas so as to complement with each other. Distillation of the inputs to an applied format. Third one is about induction. Now, induction basically is identification of new area of knowledge. Which are the new area of knowledge which is required by the students to that particular design situation. Then we ask students and the faculty to search for the source and collection of the basic data of this knowledge. Possible application of these areas in the current design situation. And unification of the new area, new and earlier knowledge. So whatever they have learned earlier, whatever they have learned now, so there is a unification of these two knowledge areas. So this is what I was talking about studio management, reconciling inputs of the current application. And then actually the design process starts over here when we talk about exploration. So initiating brainstorming process. Now this is a process wherein we ask students to just come out with various kind of possibilities which you're thinking about applications. Exploration, various possible design concepts. Now case study comes into picture over here. Then site is introduced at this stage. Then there is a literature study. Identification of parallel projects. Now there could be parallel projects which are building typology oriented and architectural focus oriented. So there are these two different streams in which parallel projects are identified, and those are studied and shown to the students. So this particular exercise is done earlier by the faculty to make them understand as to what things are. Identification of architectural elements in various projects. So there might be various kind of focus areas and possible architectural elements which could be used. So there is a small 1.5 hour presentation by one of the faculties. So all these presentations are verified earlier, shown to all the faculties earlier, and then they are presented to the students. Then the fourth part is about application. Over here, we basically talk about site analysis, site zoning. Now it depends. At lower years, possibly site zoning does not come into picture, but over a period of time, this comes into picture. Identification of building elements, generating basic concepts. Now here the student starts scribbling around. Ideation process also comes into picture. Then the sixth part is about experimentation, working on various concepts. Now, when the students have come out with 2, 3, 4 concepts, at this stage, we have a midterm jury, and the brief is given to the faculty who are taking the juries. First brief is that you need to first repeat what the students have done good, because many a times juries are like an inquiry process, and students are being thrashed like anything. That the faculty tries to identify and relate himself with the students, and if in case that does not match, he becomes extremely frustrated and so on and so forth. So first thing, we would intend that the faculty needs to understand what the students have done. Number two, he need to specifically tell what kind of things he need to carry forward. So these are the briefs which are given to the group of faculty. So this team basically needs to be upgraded there. And this is what, again, I would repeat, that studio management is all about. Alternative at micro and macro level. Study of composition in plan and elevation with block models. Now block models comes into picture over here. And then is the expression, the last part of it, the seventh part. Expression of design ideas. Now, many a times, like when we have schools and students coming from small places, hinterlands, language becomes a barrier. At the same time, they are not aware of a lot of terminologies which we have. And so expression of design ideas needs to be understood very nicely for the students in terms of vocal expression and in terms of graphical expression. Both of this needs to be discussed with the students, understood, and then given with them. Generating graphical modes of communication, composition of plates with graphical and textual contents, models, walkthrough, animation. Now these are the things which students goes on adding over a period of time. Standardization of sheets, layout and composition. So this is how this entire design approach happens with. Possibly at your school, you might also be having these kind of things. What is more important to stress over here is how does this is executed. There might be a lot of approaches which are on paper. There could be a lot of methodologies which we do, but many a times we lose our entire ground if in case those things are not properly executed within the studio. So studio management for me becomes extremely important. Now the fourth thing which we are talking about is a lot of events which are without grading, which does not fall into the ambit of the university grading system or the institutional grading system. So there are a lot of advantages of these things. The student's biggest problem is the slave mentality, which had been built into him by years of carrot and whip grading, a mule mentality, which is said, if you don't whip me, I won't work. And he didn't get whipped and he didn't work. So this is a graph on a book by Robert Pressing, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. I would recommend that all teachers should read this book. So what he says is that unless and until you don't have some kind of punishing attitude towards students, you won't work. So we need to remove this entire concept of achieving or grading system. Some projects could be there which are without grade, and surprisingly, we have been executing this a lot of events in our school for last 4-5 years. We found students who are not good in their regular sessional subjects. They do extremely good in these particular sessions which we have. You might be having such kind of session at our institution also, like NASA is one of them, wherein you find a lot of students who don't perform in their sessional, they perform good in NASA, because there are reasons for this. So once the student gain confidence that he can do good, then there is a booster for that student. Student would feel less stressed when we have no grading system. Some projects which are there without grades, student would feel less stressed. Student would stop cheating for good grades. Now this is happening rampantly with this online mode, with CAT coming in, a lot of students with no interaction happening with the faculty and the students. So these kind of things are rampant. So the moment we have this possibly would go off. Putting an end to a grade inflation. So many times, with approvals, with NAC and with NBA coming into picture, we basically intend, that faculty also intend to some extent to have this concept of grade inflation, so they would inflate grades for the students. And this would possibly completely end this concept of grade inflation. And when students are put into this particular event of which does not have a grading system, there's nothing to lose, nothing to lose to the faculty also, nothing to lose to the students also. So there's more freedom, and we make them, ready to embrace failures, because that is what is more important, even for the faculty to embrace failures. So there is a project which is given to him, and possibly some year ka elective hai, and then he's given this project, and he has this understanding ki end mein there has to have a tangible outcome, because that needs to be evaluated and marked at university level. So he wouldn't go with a lot of freedom into it. So the moment we have these institutional projects coming in between this winter vacation and summer vacation, so the faculty also is not concerned about being where the students are not going to perform. So he would experiment a lot into this. So that allows him a lot of exposure to experiment. Obviously, these all events are less of verification mode and more of discovery mode. Develop an attitude of exploration, experiencing wrong, tentative, venture in openness, and so on and so forth. So I would show you a case study of what this event I'm talking about. So this is a particular activity which we carry out in between the winter vacations, which is called as Vertical Design Studio. So what this idea is all about, I understand that many schools might also be carrying out such kind of projects. which is called as Ideas Design Opportunity, is an initiative where vertical interaction among students of all years is envisaged for a coordinated teamwork to bring out a creative best from each students. What we do, it's a platform for learning between peers for more enriching experience. Now the objective is an event where each one shall participate on the same platform and have an equal opportunity to express, participate and execute. So this is what is more important. They are all on the same platform. Competition is carried out into 4 groups. So what we do is convert the entire or divide the entire college into 4 groups. Each group has students from first year, second year, third year, fourth year and fifth year, right? So there are these 4 groups which are being composition of all years. And each group shall further be divided into 4 different trophies, 4 different design activities. And there would be faculty allotted to these groups, which would act as a mentor consultant to this particular design theme. And students shall work within the institution or outside the institution according to the design brief which has been given. So we have been doing this for the last 4-5 years. And there are a lot of external faculties, experts coming in to teach them, to make them understand what it is. So there is a final presentation which comes into picture. So this is just the presentation. So this is what the concept is. So we divide this entire college into 4 groups, which is A, B, C, D. And then they are exposed to these 4 different, verticals, which we call as cultural, social, technological, and music. So when I talk about cultural, I just go through this. And living the vanishing glory. Now, what we have done is we have identified folk performances in and around the central India. Like all of you within India might find out that there are a lot of folk performances which are dying over a period of time. So what we did is we went asked the students to search all of them, call all the artists on in the campus, ask them to perform, and when they perform, after that there was an expression to what they have performed. So we basically found out what this folk theater is all about, and 4 different kind of folk theaters were identified, and the students basically interacted with these artists. They were all called in the institution. And obviously these are the salient features which were there. So these were the 4 folk theaters which we have in central India: Khadi Gammat, Daika, Dandar and Gondar. So those people who are in and around Maharashtra might relate to what these are. And these were the sequence which were given to the students, and faculty also was involved into this. Now, because the faculty is also not exposed to these kind of acts, they also actively participate in such kind of things. So there were workshops on direction, story writing, stage performance. There were a lot of artists involved into this. Students performed on their own on the stage in the last day of the presentation. So these were the theater people who came, and they explained as to how to establish themselves on the stage. We called upon people from movies, films, and they also exposed students to how the area of the stages has to be used with, how scripts are written, how dialogues are written. And then there is a performance which comes in. So these were the artists which were called in our institution. They all performed in our campus. So there were around 40-50 artists which came. We could collect them and brought them in the institution, and this was a very nice event which we had. So one of the idea was to expose all the students to these dying art of folk theater. And accordingly, they could understand the concept and how deep-rooted this folk theater was there in our society. So these were all artists which had been to our campus. And then the students performed themselves, keeping in mind the basic concept of these particular folk theaters. Right. So likewise, this was also one of the events which we did, a vertical which is called a social. So these were the terminologies identified, and students were again exposed to an extremely accomplished artist, Nilab Banerjee, who is a national creative director for Reliance Industries and also was an ex-director to Times of India. And you could see these kind of sketches which he does, which has a very nice exposure to what urban stories are. So he was there in our institution for 2 days, 3 days, and he conducted workshops. And these are the sketches which Nilab has done. And these are his presentations. And these were the various themes which students identified, like Chahal, Pahal, Mahal, Be Clever, Culture, Food and Intensity, and Pulia Ke Paar. So language also comes into the mainstream. And these were the mode of presentations which we had. There was a small movie. And these are the work of the students which they have done. Once they identified all those characters, all those flavors of that particular urban precinct, and they tried to, put into particular canvas of this. There is a write-up also. Language comes into picture. The sketches comes into picture, and there was a presentation on this. So this was one of the groups. So what are the cultural overtones which we have? Yeah. So I think I've done with the time, or we have time, Vandana? Hello?
We do have time, Milind.
Okay. I'll just...
We do have time.
One more.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Sure,
So
no
this
problem.
was the technology vertical which we had, the third vertical. So this was about making people aware of wearing helmets, and students basically understood how helmets are made, how they are designed, what is ergonomics, what is anthropometry, and they communicated with the people on road as to how this to be used. We roped in a lot of model makers and mold makers, die makers, painters, product designers, ergonomists, and they all were involved into this project. So this is the material which was given to them, and these were the mock-ups which the students did. The clay models. These were the sketches. This was the positive which we called about, positive of a clay model. Out of this positive, once this design is finalized, they are supposed to make a mock-up. So this was a product designer who updated them as to how the dies are made and how casting has to be done with. So these are the dies which were made in FRP. They were casted on the positives of the clay. These were the dies when we were opened. Then the finishing comes into picture. The painters were involved into this. And the painters worked hand in hand with the students. And these were the models which students made. So one of the group basically designed a helmet for kids. They found out that there's no helmet which was designed for the kids. So they came out with a very small, lightweight helmet for the kids. So this was the presentation jury which we had on the final day. This was the product which students did. So these were entirely designed and executed in the campus. Yeah. So similarly, there were such exercises wherein we talked about relationship of music with design. So over here also, we involved a lot of people into it. There were music designers, performers, fine artists who came into the entire scenario. They taught students how to understand music, classical music, and how one of the artists basically did experimentation in arts and music. So we had a presentation with him. And students, they came out with an expression about this. Yeah. So these were the groups. So these were the evaluation process which we did. And these are the detailing. The point is, these are the detailing as to how to execute this entire project, So there are documents which are made. There are places in which this is to be executed. in which room, who is going to be the in charge of these rooms, and how these workplaces are to be done with, how management of the students happen. So this was an 8-day event. This happens every year in our institution. So this particular event which I was talking about had 38 faculties involved, and 62 experts were there who were associated with 38 faculties. And these particular projects did not have any kind of evaluation burdens. Yeah. So this was what I was talking about, events without grading. The next part is about real world experience. We had talks about Manoj sir, which said that all teachers need to practice. Fortunately, in our institution, a lot of people have been practicing, and I have basically exposed students to all these particular things. Now, in our institution, what we do is when we have subjects like which are very applied in the sense that construction or graphics or services, they are not taught in a conventional manner. We expose the students to an entirely different kind of approach. So this is again a grab from this very beautiful book. At a teaching college, you teach and you teach and you teach with no time for research, no time for contemplation, no time for participation in outside affairs. Just teach and teach until your mind grows dull and your creativity vanishes. And you become an automation saying the same dull thing over and over to endless waves of innocent students who cannot understand why you are so dull, lose respect, and fan this disrespect into the community. Now, I find that when you teach for 10 long years, 15 long years, there is this dullness which comes into picture. So we need to reinvent ourselves every time. So that is how we should enhance that possibility of being very creatively active. So such kind of projects which I was talking about, like institution projects or events without grading, this allows these faculties to experiment a lot. So that acts a lot of stimuli for them. So construction is an art of making a meaningful whole out of a part. So I would quote Peter Zumthor over here, very profound writer. I believe that real core of architecture lies in the act of material selection, its honesty of application, and its response to failures. So we thought that there is need of students to respect the ability of the material to lend it to transformation. So brick cannot be just a wall; it needs to transform itself into something. So I'll just give you an example of this particular exercise which we did for second semester when we teach brick bonds. So what we do is we just give them bricks. So there's a group of students which have been given say 100 bricks, 200 bricks, and we ask them that you need to construct a wall without mortar, obviously, compose a wall of say 10 feet by 6 feet height. And without any kind of brief about principles of bonding, these students, they start making all those kind of compositions so that the brick wall would not fall down. And this is how learning by mistakes comes into picture for the subject like construction. And so these all students, and after that, once this is done with, we discuss as to why this particular brick wall fell or why this particular brick wall has been standing there. So these are the experiments which we do with the students, and then they are being exposed to what correct bonds are all about. And then they are asked to make the plates or the sheets. So this is a great activity which happens outside the studio. So subjects like construction and services, we many times pull them outside the studio rather than having the same kind of drawing sheets which are made over a period of time every year. Same sheets do not come into picture. Now, the students have a different experience for a particular brick bond, so they would come out a different kind of composition. Similarly, we believe that these all materials have a story to tell, and they carry a lot of cultural baggage to it. So these particular thing, which we did a particular workshop in Kondagaon, Bastar, where students were there for 8 days. and they work with the district administration to create a particular structure. The materials were sponsored by the district administration. People were involved over there. The artisans were there, and they worked there on the site. And this was the structure which they made after 8 days. So such kind of projects, they allow the teacher, the faculty, and students to learn. So the faculty, what I feel, students would be there for 5 years, but the faculty is going to be there for a period of time. So we need to create a lot of opportunity for him to learn. So these such projects, they allow us to do a lot of things. So innovate, inspire, experiment. And these are the last slide. Further readings, possibly, if in case any of you are interested into, I would recommend Nigel Cross, Robert Prissing, Peter Zumter. And thank you.